Welcome to The Critique. The material submitted is an outline for a deep dive into the legendary status of the sour diesel cannabis strain, basically trying to separate fact from all that iconic 90s hype.
Right.
Let's get right into it, starting with the contrast between the dominant narrative and the hard evidence. To really maximize the impact here, the section comparing where hype might outweigh the evidence, it needs to go beyond just listing anecdotes. It needs to use scientific data to, justify the legendary status of sour diesel's effects.
Okay, I see what you're getting at.
The material, it clearly lays out these powerful cultural stories, like, for instance, that the strain supposedly got its name for how many relationships it ruined.
And it commanded prices up to, what, $1,000 an ounce on the gray market back then. That's powerful stuff.
It's a potent narrative, absolutely. But the risk with the current structure is that it keeps these historical claims kind of separate from the verifiable properties.
Yeah, that's the crucial pivot point, isn't it? If we just present the myth without backing it up immediately, it just sounds like a history piece, not a definitive critique.
Exactly. I mean, is there a risk that by focusing only on the anecdotal side, we sort of overlook the biological foundation for its success?
The analysis should connect those things right away.
So you're saying connect the documented physical traits to that cultural reputation to prove the legend was in fact earned.
Yes, earned, not just fabricated. So the moment you bring up the high prices, the soured relationships, the immediate next beat has to be the why.
Right. The question becomes, what was the measurable reality that allowed this one strain to create such intense cultural shockwaves?
Exactly. And all the pieces are here. They just need to be synthesized into that cause and effect story. The material notes the high concentration of key terpenes. You'd have limonene for that citrus, energetic profile.
And the beta-caryophyllene, which gives it that spicy feel-like kick, the classic diesel flavor.
Yeah, but the real driver of the soured relationships thing, that has to be the cannabinoids.
Absolutely. You mentioned the strain's high THC content, sometimes hitting 30%, with a really low CBD ratio, often under 1%.
And that's it. That is the technical foundation of the entire legend.
I mean, that's an incredibly potent, untempered cerebral rush, especially for the market back in the 90s.
Right, so frame that high THC, low CBD content as the scientific reason the high is so intensely cerebral, why it could border on anxious or racy.
Which leads directly to the reported side effects like paranoia or racing thoughts if you overdo it.
Exactly. That's the data that reinforces the soured relationships legend. It makes the folklore make sense. You move the whole discussion from just stories to pharmacokinetics.
So the legend isn't just a story. It's rooted in the measurable chemical power of the plant. That's a much more sophisticated analysis.
And you do the same thing with the price. Link the difficulty of growing it directly to the economic reality of those high prices.
Okay.
The material notes sour diesel is, notoriously hard to grow. It's a tall plant, needs intense light, constant trimming.
And that unusually long flowering time, 10 to 12 weeks.
Let's just think about that for a second. 10 to 12 weeks. For a commercial grower today, that's an entire extra month of costs. Lighting, labor, risk, compared to a faster indica.
So the product had to command a premium just to be worth the effort.
That's the point to really hammer home. Link that hard, time-intensive cultivation directly to that sustained premium price point in the 90s. It proves the value is rooted in genuine scarcity and difficulty, not just hype.
So that shifts the narrative from urban legend to premium product whose reputation was built on measurable difficulty and extreme potency. That's a really actionable synthesis. And that difficulty in cultivation, it seems to flow right into our second critique area, the whole naming and branding story. We need to strengthen the analysis of the incentives behind strain branding.
Right.
The section should be strengthened by really analyzing that shift from, accidental underground names to the deliberate branding of authenticity we see in the legal market now.
So if scarcity drove prices in the 90s, the question now is, how is today's legal industry manufacturing that scarcity through branding? That's the transition.
As I understand it from the notes, the argument starts with that fascinating accidental history. The name diesel was just slang for good weed.
And sour diesel might have been a mishearing of our diesel. Yeah, it's a great story.
It's a great foundation. But the discussion of modern branding incentives, it needs more focus on things like intellectual property and verified lineage.
I agree. That makes sense. The evidence needs to pivot to how, today, the real value is placed on phenotypic scarcity and a verified chain of custody. The critique should analyze how the current market uses the name AJ's Cut to stand out from all the generic seed bank versions.
Okay. But I see a potential risk there. If we focus so much on one grower's clone, aren't we just replacing old school hype with modern marketing hype? Where's the objective critique in that?
That's the nuance we have to explore. The critique isn't in validating the hype. It's in analyzing why this specific kind of branding is so effective right now. It's an analysis of consumer psychology and market structure.
I see. So the transition itself from accidental name to intentional provenance-based branding, that's where the critique really shines, by framing it as an IP issue, not just marketing.
Precisely. And building on that, we have to look at how that authenticity gets monetized. The material gives us the key player, Joe Murray, AJ, the keeper of the original cut. You have to leverage his story.
And we need specific current examples to show how that monetization works.
Yes. You can highlight the collaboration between AJ and Flower House New York. They brought the verified original cut back to the legal New York market.
Okay.
You frame that partnership as the ultimate branding move. They aren't just selling flower. They're selling the history, the story, the guarantee of the lineage. This proves that heritage is a major commercial incentive now.
And just like with the first point, we should tie that right back to the physical reality of the genetics. We need to explain why AJ's Cut actually matters scientifically.
Absolutely. You use the specific cultivation detail that the true sour diesel is a clone-only strain known as ECSD, East Coast Sour Diesel. That's crucial.
Versus the variability you get from seed versions.
Right. And for the audience, you should probably just clarify what that means. ECSD is a specific, verifiable genetic copy, a genuine phenotype.
And a phenotype is basically how that specific strain expresses itself, its height, its structure, its chemical profile. The ECSD phenotype is the one that defined the whole 90s legend.
Exactly. Explaining that difference is essential. It shows why the original cut is now regaining its premium legacy status in the 2020s, amongst the sea of new strains. This gives the critique a direct, actionable market insight.
Yeah.
It shows that the most successful branding today is based on verifying and preserving unique genetics. It's about scarcity, but it's a scarcity created through genetic preservation, not just production difficulty.
That definitely elevates the discussion from a historical anecdote about a name to a modern analysis of IP in the legal cannabis space. It makes the whole thing highly relevant. Okay, now let's pivot to technical performance. This is where sour diesel's legacy is, I think, most aggressively challenged by modern strains. The discussion of its influence has to focus on its surprising performance in modern extraction methods.
Right.
That's what secures its place as a contemporary genetic foundation, not just some historical footnote.
It is fascinating. We've established it's foundational because of the ChemDog lineage, and it's key to East Coast culture. But to really assess its modern influence, the critique has to address that 10 to 12-week elephant in the room.
Meaning, why do high-end growers still even bother with this challenging strain today, when there are so many easier, quicker crops that can get you comparable THC numbers?
Exactly. The answer has to be in its secondary performance metrics. You have to shift the argument from its performance as flower to its performance in extraction.
Right, to show its current technical relevance.
That's clearly laid out. I mean, sativas are traditionally seen as poor yielders for things like hash and rosin. They have looser flowers, smaller trichome heads.
Compared to dense indicas, yeah.
The power of your critique is to show where sour diesel breaks that mold. It kind of defies typical sativa expectations when it comes to resin quality.
So if the material can prove it's a superior choice for high-end concentrates, that justifies its continued place in the market, no matter how hard it is to grow the flower.
Precisely. You need to demonstrate its influence by using the evidence about its excellent performance in extracts. Point out that despite being sativa dominant, sour diesel produces copious resin. It's known as one of the best strains for solventless rosin.
Which is a technical triumph. It gives it contemporary value way beyond just nostalgia.
That is the definitive so what for the 2020s market. It's not just a flower, it's a genetic powerhouse for concentrates.
Okay, that's a great point.
And to make that even more concrete, more visually arresting for the reader, you have to include the specific technical indicators of quality. Mention the visual evidence that high-quality sour diesel live rosin presents as a pale golden yellow or a bright pineapple yellow batter or sauce.
And just for clarity, that specific color and texture, that indicates a higher preservation of, what, volatile compounds in the terpene profile? That's the goal, right?
Absolutely. That clean, bright appearance is visual proof that its terps and potency translate perfectly in the solventless process without oxidizing. This detail justifies why modern craft extractors still choose it. It shows it's a genetic engine for the concentrate market.
So its technical performance in extraction is the ultimate proof of its enduring legacy? Better than any historical story could be, it proves the genetics are still top tier, even 30 years on.
I think we've hit all 3 points of the arc there. The legend is verified by science. The history is monetized through modern IP. And the future is secured by its technical performance.
Right.
And just a final note on structure. Since this analysis is meant to be the definitive verdict, and it references the explainer for facts and the debate for the cultural side, you should probably frame this critique as that final essential piece, the one that focuses on its enduring technical and commercial value.
That's a powerful way to position the material. Okay, so to recap the core focus for strengthening this critique. First, integrate the scientific data on terpenes and potency directly into the historical anecdotes. Prove the legend was earned.
Right, not just fabricated.
Second, analyze that transition from accidental naming to the intentional branding of the AJ's cut, authenticity as a sophisticated modern market strategy.
One that's rooted in genetic preservation.
Exactly. And third, make sure to fully leverage the performance of sour diesel in modern solventless extracts as proof of its lasting technical influence and, its commercial viability today.
That's fascinating. I think that really helps strengthen the material. By synthesizing the scientific reality with the historical narrative and showing its contemporary application, this outline becomes much more than a review. It really becomes the definitive statement on the strain.
Yeah, I think so too.
We look forward to seeing the revised version. If you incorporate these points, we are confident this critique will offer the high-level, insightful feedback your audience expects. Submit your work back in again for more feedback anytime.